Bonjour, I'm Marlene, a travel lover. Welcome to Hip Abroad, where I will share more of a decade of travel experiences and inspire people with full-time jobs to travel more than they think they can. It's Travel Tuesday. Welcome back to another podcast. In this episode, I'm joined by my friend Ashley, where we're going to answer the question, how is it to travel in Australia as a Black woman? Ashley and I met through work, but connected strongly through our love and passion for spirituality and travel. So today we're going to talk. Ashley actually wrote a blog post about her life in Australia, and I was curious to share it in this podcast. So, Ashley, please introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Ashley. I have been traveling the world pretty much since I was one. My first place was Bahamas, but still. I used to work in banking, but now I'm a copywriter and yoga teacher and clairvoyant, and have a lot more freedom to move about the world remotely.
Okay, right. So my first question is your blog post talk about like how you wanted to go to Australia and how you ended up there. Can you tell us more about how you ended up in Australia and what attracted you to that country?
Yeah, well, when I first was embarking on my trip to Australia, I just didn't want to go back to the United States to start working my first job. So I was just like, I kind of was interested, but it was mainly to get away from the United States. But yeah, Australia always seemed kind of cool to me because I used to watch like Chris Lilly videos. He's like an Australian comedian, and I found their humor kind of funny. And I just thought it was beautiful and saw pictures of it and stuff like that. And they had the beach, and I knew about that, and I knew about the landscape, and I really like marsupials. I find them cute. So yeah, that's pretty much it. It was like the wildlife, the nature, as well as just like the intrigue of like the accent and the culture.
Okay, so Australia is known for its kind of laid back attitude. And so, what can you share with us about the sense of humor that people had there, and what was your personal experience?
Yeah, so it was. I always found like Australian humor kind of funny because it's like a mixture of like sort of it's more British humor, but it's like kind of American as well. Um, so they like take the piss out of everything, and they're kind of like British humor in the sense that like no one can like get too high for their britches, like they will chop you down. So I thought that was interesting. And the culture for the most part is like that. It is very laid back, like even with work, like it's not as like, intense as the American culture where you have to like work all the time. They do like as soon as they get out of work. I was in Sydney. They kind of go to the beach or go outside, do something outdoors. So I really love that. But then I found out there's like a dark side to that culture as well, because at the time when I went to Australia back in 2016 to 2017, and I was supposed to stay longer, but I cut my time short. I think like at the time there was definitely a lot less Black people or people of color for the most part. Yes, they have the indigenous population there, but they were sort of like it's like our Native American population is almost annihilated, and they're kind of moved away from regular society. So there's like a dark side there, and they kind of like belittle Aboriginal folks, and that was like commonplace. Anyone who is not British and like from British background was basically called other things like racial slurs, xenophobic slurs, and that's like a joke, like that's not seen as like anything that deep, which made me uncomfortable because American culture is if you start saying like racial slurs, even though I find America more racist in different ways, but you would like it would be a problem. Whereas there it's kind of like, yeah, we use this term and I won't repeat it, but like, yeah, we use this term to explain Italians and Greeks, whatever. And it's like humorous to them.
Okay. And as a Black person, we need some care to be taken with our hair and everything. How did you find? How was it easy for you to find hair product? Like if like a black lady want to go to Australia, how can do it? And how did you manage actually to find a product that will cater to your hair or skin or anything?
Yeah, it was really hard. Like black, there wasn't really many black hairstyle lists there. Like I didn't go to one. I went to someone who's white who worked on a mixed race person's hair once and talked about it all the time. Um, but yeah, in the stores, it's really hard. And when I went, Amazon wasn't even there yet. So yeah, you pretty much use argan oil, and that was that. Not and the makeup was like maybe I got to my shade, and that was the darkest tone.
Oh, interesting. So if someone goes there, they need to bring their own product. You will.
Yeah, I mean they have Amazon now, so you could get it shipped. That's yeah, pretty much that. Because like when I was there was only 24 million people in the whole of Australian population. Majority of those people are white or Asian, and so yeah, there's not a lot there.
Dating is always an interesting question because it always differs from one country to another. So, how will you define your dating experience when you were in Sydney? In Sydney, and what advice would you give to anyone looking to live and date in Australia?
Well, if you're black, good luck. It's a challenge. It was one of the worst dating experiences I've ever had. Because like I was seen as an object and it was very obvious, like to the point where it's like it was almost sort of blatantly obvious that I was an object. Um, I'm not saying every Australian man's going to have a problem, but there's really not a lot of options outside of dating someone who's white and Australian, or white and European in Sydney. If you're Asian, you have more options with that. But like for me, I found it a bit of a challenge because it was just people would objectify me and didn't really want me to be their girlfriend. They wanted to sleep with me, maybe spend a bit of time to have like to let the novelty kind of wear off. And then they were like, okay, back to whatever I was originally doing.
So, you think for someone who's on holiday, it's kind of fun to date, as long as she doesn't expect, they don't expect anything longer term. In that way, it's okay. But if you live there, you say it's difficult.
Yeah, like if you're on holiday and you just want a holiday romance, then yeah, why not? A lot of Australians don't have a lot of experience with people outside of like European and white Australian. So you might see challenges there. But if you just want to have sex and have a good time, Australian men are really fun. They're funny. They're laid back. You're going to have a good time.
Your blog mentions a lot about building a community, finding like-minded individuals. How did you navigate through these challenges when you were there, and did you find anyone like-minded? Did you make a lot of friends there, for example?
I actually did, weirdly enough. Like, Australia was probably the first time that I found it kind of a challenge to make friends, but I think that was all in my head because I actually made a lot of friends there. It's just like because I'm used to like traveling for school and then like working after, it was so much easier to make friends like even in London because I was like in law school and it was really easy to meet people. But in Australia it like you kind of had to make more of an effort. So I met people through work. I met people through people who knew people who lived there. I went to like meetup groups and stuff like that. That's kind of how I met people. It was kind of like you just have to put in the effort, but there's definitely because Sydney is I wouldn't say it's like ethnically diverse, but it is diverse in the sense of there's many different Europeans that go there, Americans, there's different cultures. So not everyone's like Australian. If you want to make friends with more, I guess, like culturally like-minded people. But yeah, I had Australian friends. And I also had like European friends. I'm the type of person, I don't like going to a location and not making friends with the locals because I find that strange. So I definitely made a choice to like, meet Australians and be friends with them.
So, despite all these challenges, you also mentioned on your blog the positives about living in Australia. So, can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of nature. It's a lot of nature reserves. That's probably where I found my solace. Is like it was a really challenging year for me, but I did a lot of nature walks, a lot of walking by the beach, going to the beach. Beaches are gorgeous there. Traveling around Australia because Australia is really, really far from everywhere else. And nobody really realizes that until it's like 7.5 hours to get to Asia. Um, but I mainly like traveled around Australia. I went to Adelaide, went to Brisbane. I went to where else? Oh, I drove down the South Coast. Like I did stuff all the time, and I really enjoyed that. And they have a lot of open like wildlife reserves, so it's not like a zoo where they're enclosed. It's like you go and you can see like wallabies and stuff, and like give them food or walk around. So I went to a lot of stuff like that.
Okay, that sounds fun. That sounds like something I should go to as well. Would you recommend Australia as a destination for me? Because you know me, I like to travel. I like to discover new pasture and.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't like even in my blog. I talk about like I would never say don't go because my experience could have been my experience. I also lived there, 7 years ago. I don't know what it's like now. I'm sure with immigration, things might have changed. I don't know. But yeah, I definitely would recommend to go there to visit, to see the country for yourself, to experience it for yourself, even if it means to like go and live there for 3 months to a year. Like experience it for yourself. Don't just take my word because my experience could be I met the wrong people. You can meet the right people. You never know. So, but it's a beautiful country, a lot of interesting different wildlife there. People are generally nice when you visit. Of course, you're going to meet the occasional asshole, but people are generally nice and friendly. So, yeah, definitely.
Not for you. Don't be scared.
Don't be scared. Just know that it has its, issues with the racism, and they don't really hide it. But that's that.
There's also a country where they don't, like someone who's born and bred in Australia, don't really see much diversity. I would say you always see the same people because it's so far away and so isolated that, of course, it's not acceptable to be a racist. But I think they could probably, yeah, be a bit more, to make less joke about it and maybe be a bit more open-minded. And that's why when I met some Australia, I've been traveling around the world, and that kind of helped them to expand their horizons.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Australians here are a little less, well, some can be annoying like anybody else, but I would say that a lot of Australians, one thing that's good is the youth really do travel a lot. So the culture is sort of changing. But I would also say that, yeah, when you're over there, it's like people grew up together. Like you don't know the history of like the Black American experience or the, Black European experience or even like the indigenous Mexican experience. You just don't get that exposure. But now that we have the internet, now that there's more immigration, I think they are trying to change the culture a little bit.
So the purpose of this channel and of this podcast is to inspire women from everywhere to travel the world. And I know there's like some concern with Black women about traveling. So this is why I brought Ashley, and it's not because I want to say that Australia is racist. It's not the point of the podcast at all. It's actually to encourage you to go. So what advice would you give to a Black woman who want to travel and live in Australia, and how she can navigate the country without worries?
I'd say don't come with rose-colored glasses like I did, where I was just like, oh, multiculturalism. Like understand that racism does exist. It exists everywhere, but I think, I grew up in a pretty sheltered environment. So I always thought the best in people. Sometimes that's not always the greatest way to go about things when you're traveling. Like just be not thinking the worst, but just be neutral about your experience. Be mindful that you might hear things that are what would be considered racist in like Europe or even America might not be seen as racist over there. Be mindful of that. And be mindful that you might need to take a year's supply of hair product and makeup. And that also just, I would say, like, keep a pretty open mind. Like, be aware, but also just don't see everybody as the enemy. Go explore it in your own way and see if you like it. And that's that.
And something that I know, they have good coffee and good food.
They do have really good coffee. Best coffee I've ever tasted. And like the food is top notch.
Because they have those Asian, they are not far from Asia, so the ingredients are like amazing, right? And also in terms of, because there's the new term, that's a trick question, a new term about travel sustainably and responsible travels. And you say that Australia is a place that is very much focused on ecotourism. And for example, where they, so an example that I would give, like when I was going to certain country in Asia, because I don't want to name country, you go to the beach and be full of plastic, and then you will have to save the turtle from eating these plastics and things like that. Did you see any of this in Australia in terms of like plastic or saving the water or saving the planet?
No, but they are doing more stuff like that. I know a lot of people are thinking about cleaning up the beaches, but the beaches aren't dirty. I will say when I went, there was a hole in the ozone. I think that hole has been repaired, but they are well known for using a lot of fossil fuels, and they're not stopping anytime soon. So I think there's a little bit of ecotourism. I think there's a little bit of like trying to live sustainably there. Just kind of like, all Western countries are trying to do something about climate change, but not enough. But it's not as bad as I would say, even Tulum, which I used to live, where there would be seaweed forming from the trash and waste. It's not that at all. The beaches are very pristine.
Clean beaches. That's what we always did.
I mean, what do you think now about Australia? Now that I'm
no, as I said, my objective is to talk about every country, and my goal is to visit every country if I can. So it's always good to be able to answer these questions. So yes. So also, if you want more, as I said, I want to inspire you to travel there. So Ashley blog is very comprehensive about visiting Australia and where to go. So where can we find you? I'm going to put it on the show notes. So where can we find you online?
So I'm at She's Wonderful, WANDERFUL.com. My blog is called What It's Like Living as a Black Woman in Australia. And then you can also find my spiritual business at thoughtfultarot.com if you ever want a tarot reading or yoga, 1-to-1.
On that one, I'd always like to end the podcast with an inspirational quote. Thanks to your spiritual spirit, can you share a quote with us that will inspire us in life or to travel more?
Yeah, always keep an open mind.
Good one. Nice and short.
Yeah.
Thanks very much for watching, and thanks for listening if you are not watching. And I will see you in the next one. Live inspire. Bye.